Something about a wet weekend, and it's like, all right, wait a minute, I didn't hear that, so.
Okay, I guess that's okay. Hi, this is John Sarver. Welcome to Michigan Solar Story. And let me first thank our sponsors, the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Homeland Solar, McNaught and McKay, Iron Ridge Racking, Harvest Solar, and GLREA Energy. And I bet a lot of you are members of GLREA, but if you're not, we would love to have you join, which you can do on our website, glrea.org. So we'd love to have you join us and support our educational and advocacy efforts. Tonight we have, I think that's going to be a very interesting solar story. Kendal Kuneman, who's on the board with me, GLREA, and is presently our secretary, just recently transition from being our president, is going to talk about the major, it's really major retrofit she did to the home that her grandma once lived in Detroit. And so please mute yourself until the presentation is done, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So Kendal, go ahead.
Thank you, John. And I also just want to say thank you to John Sarver and others at GLREA who put these Thursday evenings on, because I think this was the greatest idea when they started doing these during more COVID shutdown days, and is a great way to share all the different projects and initiatives going on across the state. So thank you for all you do, John. But I'm going to present on a home that I renovated somewhat recently. It took a number of years to finish. I didn't time myself, but I think that there should be plenty of time for questions at the end. But I guess if there are questions throughout, feel free to interrupt me. But I'm going to get started here. So just a little bit about me. First of all, I thought this was the most appropriate headshot for this presentation. This is one of the dirty jobs I had to do during the project of cleaning out the attic. But a little bit about myself. I'm currently an independent energy and sustainability consultant, and I'm also, through that work, the senior program manager with the Detroit 2030 district. My educational background is in architecture and design build. As John mentioned, I am a current GLREA board member and former board president. And I also co-chair the Energy Waste Reduction Committee of the Detroit City Council Green Task Force. And in Detroit, I am a resident of District 7 on the west side of Detroit, not too far from Dearborn. And this kind of actually shows you the neighborhood right here where I live and where the home is that I renovated. This description on the left is something I had found from a news article that kind of described the Warrendale community in Detroit, in case you're not familiar with where it's at. But it's one of Detroit's largest working class, most affordable, unpretentious neighborhoods surrounded by suburbs on 3 sides: Dearborn, Dearborn Heights, and Dearborn. We're just a few blocks from Rouge Park, which is Detroit's largest public park. And we also have the highest density of Detroit's child population. And we are one of the city's strategic neighborhood fund areas. And that plan will be centered on children. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the project and why this project and why I wanted to do it. I've always been passionate about renovating homes and buildings in Detroit. And this home also had the family history tied to it. I'm also really interested in finding more ways to invest in the community and in my community. And I had a lot of interest in redeveloping a property as an affordable rental housing that would prioritize the health, well-being, and comfort of the occupants, and also provide low to no utility costs, and doing that through environmental and energy efficiency design choices. Personally, I'm also very deeply concerned about the climate crisis and resiliency. So I wanted to renovate a home that would be able to hopefully withstand some of the severe weather and other things that we might be dealing with in the near future. And just overall interested in contributing to a solution to a problem that we're dealing with in society. And I very much wanted to learn directly from the project experience and then share that knowledge that I gained with others who are interested in learning. And then the family history piece. So the photo on the left is a photo of my great-grandparents from Ukraine and Russia, and they immigrated to Detroit, and they moved into this house in 1945. They previously lived in Southwest Detroit, but the photo on the right shows them with 3 of their children. Their 4th, whom was not born yet, was my grandmother. And these were some photos that my mom recently dug out, actually, for the Planet Detroit article. These are 2 photos of my grandmother sitting on the front porch. And I like this image because it shows where the house is in proximity to where I live. So the home on the far right corner is where my husband and I live, and the home in the far left corner is the home that I renovated. The home in the middle is a house that my great-grandfather built where my grandfather grew up. So my grandparents met because their homes were almost back to back. So my grandmother lived in the house in the upper left corner, and my grandfather lived in the house in the center. And this is just a photo of my grandparents. It's a little blurry. My grandparents with their 3 kids and my mom in the center. And then this is the house when I purchased it. And this is the house today. So I'm going to kind of show you guys what I did to get to this point. But I wanted to start just giving a brief overview of something called the HERS index score. And there may be several people on the call that are very familiar with this, so apologize if I'm repeating anything. But this is something that my HERS rater actually helped me with putting together this slide. But the ResNet HERS index, so HERS stands for Home Energy Rating System. And it's in the score, the HERS index score is the industry standard by which a home's energy efficiency is measured. So the lower the score means the more energy efficient the home. And then each 1% of energy reduction is equivalent to 1 point reduction from the home's HERS score. So a net zero home would have a HERS score of 0. And if you were to build a new home today in Michigan to our current energy code, the average HERS score would be 100. So with my home renovation of a 100-year-old home, it'll be 100 years old next year, I was able to achieve a HERS score of 40, and that's without renewable energy. So that's simply with energy efficiency. So this was the condition of the home when I purchased it. I purchased it from the land bank in an auction for $1,700. There was only one other person bidding against me. And this is what it looked like inside, full of trash, no windows. This is the kitchen. The stairwell in the back, hole. I'm watching John Sarver's face. Holes in the roof. And so this was the actual day that I came out. You can see the upcoming auction sign in the front. I don't recall that I got to walk through the house. I can't remember because it had been boarded up. Maybe I did get to walk inside, but it was dark. But this was the condition of the home. So the way the land bank does it is they advertise upcoming auctions, and they'll sometimes do open houses, and you can come by and see the property before you decide if you want to bid on it. Now, the way I found this house was because I had opened up an email from the land bank randomly and was scrolling through it like I do to just see if there's anything interesting that I might miss. And I recognized the address of a property that was going to be auctioned. And so I called my grandmother and I asked her, and she goes, "Yeah, that's my house." So it was pretty interesting how I kind of stumbled upon it. I wasn't planning on purchasing this house. I didn't even know where it was. I didn't even fully know the whole history of it, but I found it. These aren't the greatest floor plan drawings. They just give you an idea of the layout. But the first floor if you start from the bottom where the front living room is, that's where the front door is. So it actually has two large living room, dining rooms, and a kitchen in the back. And then there's two bedrooms that are off to the left-hand side with a bathroom in between. So the stairwell is actually at the back of the house. And the stairwell is how you would enter the second floor unit, because this is a duplex. So this just gives you an idea of the layout. Both units have two like larger living room, dining room spaces. So it's really open and spacious, more so than you would think from a 1,600 square foot home. The home was originally single family, and I forgot to put a photo of the permit, but I found the permit from the city from 1937, converting it into a two-family. So one of the first decisions I had to make right off the bat was with the roof. And it was a really one of many really big decisions to make, was to go with a metal roof. So there were layers of roofing and asphalt roofing and the original cedar that was on there, and so the whole thing needed to be redecked. And I did go with a metal roof because of the longevity of the material. So that roof should not have to be replaced. I'll go back to the slide. One of the other decisions I had to make right off the bat was windows. And so I didn't do anything special with the windows. They're just double pane. They're not triple pane, because at the time, figuring out financing and making some of these larger decisions up front, it just led me to go with just pretty standard double pane. They're slightly more efficient, but pretty standard windows. I will mention too that I was able to finance this roof through Michigan Saves. And I think a lot of folks are familiar with Michigan Saves, but they do help finance any energy efficiency or water efficiency and renewable energy projects. So it's a great program. And then in the fall of 2020, DTE launched a pilot, and I found out about it. And it aligned with what I was hoping to do with this property. And in a lot of ways, it provided me some guidance on how to get to where I wanted to go. And so this was just a small pilot. It was an incentive program for high efficiency, all electric homes. And it was based on the ResNet HERS index. So the home had to achieve a HERS score of 40 or lower, and that's before renewable energy, as I mentioned. So just on the right, these are just a handful of some of the measures that were included, but I will move on to the next slide. So DTE had a market rate pilot and an affordable homes pilot. And so my house qualified for the affordable homes pilot, and they determined that based on qualified census tracts. So I don't know if it's that important to go over all of this, but this is how my project qualified for the affordable homes pilot. And then these are so the red arrows point to some of the incentives that I was able, some of the measures that I was able to get incentives for, but I could not get any of these incentives unless my project met that HERS score of 40. And one other thing I wanted to mention about the DTE program, what did I want to mention about this? I think that in the beginning, the pilot may have been aimed more towards new construction, just because it is hard to do these types of renovations and achieve that low HERS score. But they were open to accepting my project into the program. And I think there was at least one other project similar to mine. So one of the things that DTE required was that I hire a HERS rater, an approved HERS rater from a list that they had. And so I hired Dream DET, Chris McTaggart. He's based in Detroit. He was great. So some of the some of the services he provided me. So he provided design consulting services. So he recommended recommendations on building enclosure, ventilation, and just other systems. He also was doing the projected and confirmed energy modeling in order to give me what my certified HERS rating was. He completed 2 site visits, so that included pre-drywall and final inspection. He did blower door test, infrared analysis, just to identify any air leakage and major thermal bridging. And I'll touch on this a little bit more later. So all of these tests and verification were done as a requirement for that HERS rating in order for me to get the DTE incentives. And this is actually Chris's slide, a little bit about the process, which I'll touch on later, but he did provide the energy modeling for me. He used a program called Ecotrope, which may have been a requirement from DTE. I'm not entirely sure. And he did the mid-construction inspections and the final inspection and performance test. So I wanted to, I'm going to have a lot of photos here because I think that will be helpful. But I wanted to just first talk about the existing siding. So the existing siding, at some point it had been covered with aluminum siding, but that had been torn off and scrapped prior to me purchasing the home. So this is the original siding. It could have been salvaged, definitely, and it really was hard for me to tear it all off. But that's really what I needed to do in order to achieve the HERS score that was required. So I had all of the existing siding removed. And once I had the existing siding removed, I was able to, well, am I missing some slides here? I wanted to go to the insulation part. Maybe I don't have them in here, but once the existing siding was removed, I was able to hire the insulation contractor to drill and fill from the outside of the home to fill the wall cavities with dense packed cellulose and insulate all of the walls. So they were able to do it from the outside rather than drill into the plaster walls inside. So once they completed the insulation, I then had the entire house wrapped with a zip panel, an R6.6. So it has plywood and then 1 inch of foam insulation attached to it. So it's 1.5 inches thick. So the whole home was wrapped. And what this did was provide an air barrier for the home, making it very airtight. But that was a large decision to make on my part. So these are just some photos where you can see the thickness of the foam in the home wrapped. And it was really important that the seams be taped carefully and also around all of the openings. The contractors were great. They did beautiful work, but it was such a fight to continuously emphasize the importance of the air sealing over and over and over again. Well, we don't think you need to do that. Well, the manufacturer says that you do. So it was just, you cannot emphasize air tightness and air sealing more with contractors on these types of projects. But these are just some photos of them. So this crew, this would have been January, February of 2021. And at that time, things were still a little bit scary with COVID, a little bit of uncertainty, about jobs and construction jobs. So I really lucked out and I had this crew all to myself for about a month, maybe a little bit more. And they did this when it was very, very cold out. And they rebuilt all of the window boxes, as you can see here, prior to putting the zip panel on. So it was a big, big job. So these are just some photos. And this is what I was talking about, how important it was to make sure that all the openings were properly taped and the seams taped. Here are my pictures. I knew they were coming up. So these are just pictures of the insulation contractor out there doing the drill and fill of the dense pack cellulose. And inside, they did have to do a little bit of interior drill and fill. It was minimal, but they still had to do it in some places. And then there were a few rooms, not many, where the plaster had been taken down, and the studs were exposed. So they did the net and blow. So these are just two photos kind of showing that. And then I also had a separate insulation contractor come out and do the foam insulation in some of the other areas, including the attic, which I will, I have some additional photos there too. So in the attic, one of the things that was emphasized to me over and over again was that I really should not insulate. I should not put the insulation in until I know that the air sealing has been done properly. So when Chris came out to the house and set up the blower door test the first time, we immediately felt a huge draft coming from the attic. And so we knew that the contractor who had done the air sealing had not done a good job or had missed something because there was a huge draft of air. So I had to bring in, I did bring in a different contractor, and they really understood what I was trying to do and really worked with me. And so they did a very careful air sealing before I even insulated. So we made sure everything was very airtight. And I also, I had on the previous slide, I did have baffles shown here. So I think it was actually helpful for me to be up in the attic cleaning it out myself, because I could best understand how the ventilation of the home would work, also with the roof contractor. But so these are just photos from the attic. Now that ductwork that you see running in the attic is actually for the whole home ventilation system. So they were able to run all of that duct in the attic, and then it went down the former chimney chase into the home, which I think I have some photos that I'll share. So again, just making sure everything is sealed before the actual blown in insulation. This is showing the whole home ventilation system. So this is where the fresh air is being pulled in. And I have some photos to show you, but that's on the north side of the house. And we located it very high up on the north side, away from the lower ground level where there's a neighbor's driveway, and you don't want somebody who might be smoking, or if your car is running, any of that exhaust and smoke to be pulled into your home. So it's located high on the north side of the house. One of the other places where I needed to insulate were the basement room joists. And that photo on the left shows one of the basement windows bricked closed. There were 6 big windows and a coal chute. So I had a lot of openings that I had to close up. And then in between the joists, I had to remove brick. There was a brick in between every single one. So I had to get in there and knock all of those out and vacuum everything out, make sure it was clean for when the insulation contractor came in to do the foam insulation. And you can see on the photo, well, both of these photos, you can see there's cracking, and that was likely caused by this kind of being on one of those cold weather cusp days where it was probably slightly too cold for the foam. So I had that contractor come back and kind of reseal a few of those places. And these are just more photos of the basement windows that I had, so that you can see the before and after, and from the inside and outside. So after all that was done, I had to put brand new siding on the house, and that was another very big decision. I did choose to go with hardy board. It again should last forever. Doesn't need to be painted for at least the first 15 years. But it was a really big decision, and it was during a time where every time I called the contractor, the price would change every week because it was summer and fall of 2021. So prices were just, and they just kept going up and up. So fortunately, most of the project I had done prior to COVID, but this was a big item that I unfortunately got hit with some of the increased prices. But like everything we've seen, even the windows, when I purchased them in 2018, the same exact window was being sold for at least 60% more at Home Depot than when I had purchased it just a few years prior. So I was very fortunate in that sense. And I'm just looking at the time. I think we have enough time. These are the mini split heat pumps. These are ductless heat pumps, and um, I had everything run inside the walls. So these provide the heating and cooling to the home. You can see in these photos upstairs where the insulation contractor had to do the drill and fill from inside. So you can see those little holes that they plugged. One of the things I was told by my HERS rater was that if I had decided to go with a ducted heat pump system, that I might gain some efficiency. But because I had made this decision before I even knew that the DTE program would exist, and this home never had duct work, it had radiators. So if I had installed a ducted system, that would have involved opening up more walls and running all brand new ductwork. So there's always these decisions that you have to make on what makes the most sense for your project. So one of the things I've asked Chris to do, which unfortunately I didn't have it ready for today's presentation, was just to give me an idea of just how much more efficiency would I gain if I did a ducted heat pump system and triple pane windows. I'd be curious, like how much lower would that bring me on the HERS score? Would it be 5 points? Would it be less? With him, just to see, so that I can kind of share that information with others too, and understand for myself. So these are there's 2 separate systems, one for the first floor unit and one for the second floor unit. And in total, there's 8 heads throughout the house. And honestly, that home is so airtight and efficient that I can never imagine a day where you would have to have all of those heads running. It's just so comfortable in there. And this is a photo of Chris when he was out doing a blower door test, just kind of getting set up. So he did the blower door test and infrared analysis. So he was just helping me try to identify the air leakage and thermal bridging. And honestly, I don't think there was a whole lot that I could have done at that point with the thermal bridging. I think there was one corner, the walls were insulated, the zip panel was put on the outside of the home. So there wasn't a whole lot I could do to address some areas. But there were a few that he pointed out that I was able to address. And then definitely the air leakage before putting the attic air in, before insulating the attic. We identified that the air sealing had not been done properly, or to meet my needs for the program. And this is just a report. So this is showing, when he was doing the blower door testing and kind of the results, but also his infrared analysis. And I know you guys can't tell. I don't even know if I can remember exactly all of these different areas, but it can show you where there's that temperature difference and where, if I'm able to better insulate in some of those areas, he pointed those out to me. And another contractor that I worked with was Great Lakes Building Innovations, and they did the aero barrier, so air sealing of the entire home, which if you're not familiar, I'll show some pictures. So they came out, I think it was a Sunday. They were out there for, I believe, close to 12 hours. So how the process works is that they take the blower door they take the blower door and they they pressurize your home. And then they set up, there's kind of like these tripod looking things throughout the house that have a tube connected to them that come back outside the door to where there's the aero barrier solution, which has been described to me as like an Elmer's glue mist. And it goes throughout the whole house, and it seals up any cracks and holes that aren't very visible to us, but they're there. And so it took almost 12 hours for them to be out there to set up and to get that house down to a certain air infiltration rate, which was also part of the requirement for the project. So I was told that if I did not do the aero barrier and the zip panel on the outside of the house, I would never be able to achieve the Hearst score that I did. Necessary things to do in order to achieve that. So this was their setup in the backyard. It's quite the setup. So they've got the blower door in there. They're pressurizing the inside of the house, and they've got all the tubes running to the solution that is then going to these, like I said, these tripod looking things. And excuse me, I believe they spin, and they were sealing up. So they had a computer set up, so they were watching the progress. And these were just some of the results. And so these are verified results that they provide. And I think, yeah, here we go. So here are the results from my house. So when they started, so just think, I've gone through all of this work. I've emphasized air sealing and to every single contractor that's worked on this project. But I still had the equivalent of a 271.3 square inch hole in the house, even after all of the work that I had done. Which is still, it's not bad, but it's, in order for me to meet the requirements of the DTE program, I had to get it down. So we cut that down to about 100 square inch hole and achieved the air changes per hour. The ACH was 2.26. So overall, it was a 63% reduction in envelope leakage. And then I had talked about the whole home ventilation systems, the energy recovery ventilators. So because the home is, there's no way to bring in fresh air. There's ductless systems, and it's so airtight that you have to bring in fresh air. So I did install, DTE treated this as two separate projects. So I also had two separate systems per unit, which I believe the city was going to require me to do anyway, to separate both units. So in the basement, this is at the ground level. So when the air is being exhausted out of the house, it's going out at the ground level. And like I said, and this is after the system was installed. And then on the north side of the house at the very top, you can see where the other vent is located that pulls the fresh air in. So both of those vents were located on the north side, just one's higher and one's lower. And I did have a few issues after installation. The ductwork that was used for the ventilation systems was not insulated duct. So the cold air being pulled into the house through the non-insulated ductwork caused condensation when it came into the warm home. So that was something that I had to bring the HVAC contractor back to address. And as I mentioned, when I put the metal roof on and I was planning on doing an all-electric home renovation, there was really no need for the chimney. So we took the chimney down, and later on, I didn't even have this planned out, that we would later use that chimney chase to run the ductwork for the whole home ventilation system. but this is where the condensation was running down as it pulled the fresh air in from the attic level through that insulated ductwork into this non-insulated ductwork. That's where the condensation was occurring. I also installed heat pump water heaters, one for each unit. And these were just some of the interior, the hardwood floors being finished. Some interior finishes, the first floor kitchen and the second floor kitchen. And I do have some updated photos that I'm going to share, and then I'll be wrapping up my presentation for any questions. There now is, as of like a month and a half ago, there is now a family living on the first floor. I'm still wrapping up a few things on the second floor, but this is the front door coming into one of the living rooms, like I mentioned. So this is the front living room. And that second living room, dining room area. And kind of looking towards the south facing wall and looking back to the front door. And then in the hallway, looking to the front bedroom and then looking to the back bedroom. This is the bathroom. I wish I could have shown you guys more before photos because this makes it look so good. It did not look like this. You remember that kitchen photo from the beginning? Well, this is the kitchen now. And looking back to the front door. So the kitchen's nice and open. Able to fit a table in there. And there, the back door, you can see will be going out to future steps. They're not currently there right now. And this is where the stairwell is. So just to explain the layout, so the first floor tenant can enter the front door or the back door, or come in another back door that's at the lower bottom of those stairs right there. So the stairwell connects both units, and both tenants have access to the basement. So this was prior to the door being installed at the stairwell. And here's the home today. And I think that's all I had. We should have plenty of time for any questions. Should I unshare my
Yeah, why don't you unshare? Yep. It'd be easier for us to see. What a story, my goodness. It sounds like you learned a lot. And it sounds also like some of your contractors learned some things too. The way you describe them not necessarily doing what they were supposed to. But if you'd like to ask a question, just raise your virtual hand, which you can do down in reactions. Just hit reactions and you should be able to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. So who's got the first question? Go ahead, Harvey.
So I asked these in the chat. Could you be specific about how you insulated the roof? And also, I was curious about the flooring material you used in those beautiful renovated rooms.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I don't think I had a photo with the actual insulation blown in. So in the attic, it is a cold roof system. So the actual attic is not, the attic itself is not insulated. So, which is why it was so important for us to air seal before we blew in the insulation. So we air sealed and then we blew in R60 cellulose insulation on top of everything. I realized I didn't have a photo in there. So the actual roof rafters, there's no insulation there. It's a cold roof system, unconditioned space, which is again why it was well, I guess regardless, it's critical to do the air sealing, but that's why when I showed those pictures, they had done the foam insulation carefully around any of the openings into either the walls or the ceiling. And then the flooring, the flooring is actually original. A lot of people come in there and ask me, or they're like, that is the original floor, but it was all original. It's amazing how beautiful those floors are. Even when I don't know how long the house sat without doors and windows. But they really clean up nicely.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like wood.
I know it is so beautiful.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Kendall, what, looking back now on everything that happened, is there anything you would do differently?
Um, it's well, I don't know if there's anything I would do differently. Going through the process, I now feel like I would be better prepared if I had another home just like that. Or if I were to approach another project, I would have a better idea of how to approach it. One of the things that was really complicated about this is that there's not there's there's not financing to do these types of projects. And so it's very hard, and I think anyone who's doing these projects in Detroit knows that you're piecing financing together to make these happen. So I think a lot of us kick ourselves for like, why is this taking me so long? But you had so even some of the decisions I made, like I said, the windows at that time, those windows were purchased on a Home Depot credit card with a 0% financing for whatever, 6 months, 24 months, I don't remember. But you get in those situations where you have to make these big decisions and you have to quickly figure out how to finance it, unless you have the funds kind of set aside to do these projects. So maybe I would have done some things differently, or um, in a different order or more quickly, if the financing had been available, but it wasn't. So it did take a number of years. And the DTE incentive certainly helped offset some of the additional costs that go into doing a project like this versus just doing like a standard renovation. But even those programs, they don't give you the funding until you achieve what they want you to achieve in the end. And then the last thing I'll mention is, yeah, when I first purchased this home, I had no plans of purchasing a home. I didn't really have the means to be purchasing a home or doing a renovation like this at that time. But there was a program in Detroit called the Detroit Home Mortgage Program, and they would help homeowners with all of the financing to do a full renovation and do it within the 6-month period that the Detroit Land Bank requested these homeowners to do. So I was supposed to renovate this home in 6 months. And so I was pursuing that program, but the program came out and actually said, this doesn't work for this house in this neighborhood. It just wouldn't. They said, here are all the things that you have to do to bring this home to health, safety, and code. And if you do all these things, this is how much it's going to cost.
You have to go way down there.
We would only assess
There was
the home
16
at a
years,
certain
17 and 18, they got a light
Oops.
on.
They were still assessing the home well below the amount that it would take to finance the project. So there were, and these are things that I think a lot of people come up against in Detroit, and trying to get these homes back alive.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Jay, go ahead with your question.
I actually have 3 questions. The first one is, did your grandmother get to walk through the house or see the house after the refurbish? That's the first question.
She did. When we did that interview for Planet Detroit, we actually did it last April. And it just didn't get published till, a little bit later. So she was there. She has seen photos. But since then her health has deteriorated. And so I had an open house for family and friends prior to the first tenant moving in so that I could share the project with people. And She wasn't able to come to see like the final, but she has seen photos and she's doing okay. But yeah, she at least got to see it close to the finish line.
Well, that's got to be thrilling. The next question was, what do you figure ballpark what your total investment was? I know you paid $1,700 for the property. What did the final bottom line end up being?
Well, and there's still some ongoing work, but it's close to 275,000. That does not include the DTE incentive. So that would definitely bring that number down. The incentive program definitely helped.
Okay, great. And the last question is, I know you took out the old chimney and you used it as a chase for a bunch of ductwork. Did you run into any problems with the fire inspection where they consider that to be a fire chase? That if there were a fire in the lower levels of the building, they would spread very quickly. Did you have to do anything special to block that?
Not that I recall. That was
Okay.
never yeah, because the ventilation system was part of the mechanical permit and was kind of clumped in with the rest of the HVAC work at the house. And that particular inspector was actually really helpful. I know city inspectors have a reputation, but I had some good conversations with several of them and actually followed up with them with questions I had. So that was never brought up, but
Okay.
um, but that
Well,
makes
thank
me
you on
curious.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Kendall, I'm
Nice
guessing
job.
that you have some solar planned somewhere down the way. And if that did happen, would you get the house down to net zero? Any sense for how that might work?
And that's one of those scenarios I was hoping to run with my HERS rater. So he built the energy model for the home, and there's just a few things that I'd like to sit down with him to see because there's not the only things that I could do to make this home more efficient right now. And one of them I thought that I would have to do for the DTE program, but I was able to achieve the target without it, so I haven't done it yet, is insulating the interior basement walls. So putting another I think it was like R2021. There's a couple different products that you just wrap the interior of your basement walls. So that is something that could be done to improve the efficiency of the home. And then something that could be done, but I wouldn't do it right now, and hopefully don't have to think about this for a long time, are the windows, if the windows were triple pane versus double pane. But I don't know, I don't know how much more efficiency that would gain me. Because I think over time I've been told, more efficient windows are definitely the way to go, but a window is a window, and you still have, you still have this large opening in the envelope. So those are some things I'd like to better understand, is how much more efficiency I could gain with the basement wall insulation. And then also the what ifs. What if I had done ducted heat pump system for the heating and cooling? What if I had put in triple pane windows? But other than that, there's not a whole lot more improvement that I could do. So then at that point, what size renewable energy system would be required, and would it even be possible to truly get this home to net zero? So yeah, I'd love to install solar, but I don't know how soon that will be. And I'm hoping that there might be some federal support for, preserving affordable units, and installing a system like that. I don't know what that is right now.
Am I right in assuming that in addition to the DTE incentives that you were able to take advantage of some federal tax credits for a number of these measures?
No, I was not able to, because it's not my primary residence.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's too bad.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay. Other questions for Kendall or comments? This is a kind of a fascinating story. One thing that I guess I'm not completely surprised, but your crusade to do air sealing, it was like never ending. It's not like it was simple to just hire somebody and, oh yeah, they did it and it worked perfectly. It's the first
Yeah.
contractor didn't do a very good job. You bring in somebody else, and then you bring in that kind of misting system at the end to really kind of get you down to a good number. I mean,
Yeah.
that to me kind of demonstrated, of course, this is a really old home, how challenging it is to really reduce that air sealing, how to do the air sealing and reduce the infiltration. It was not
Yeah.
easy. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely not easy. And so when we talk about decarbonizing homes and buildings, it's a lot of work. And
Yeah.
I had a lot of contractors, I dealt with, making phone calls to contractors and asking them to come out to, look at, mechanical HVAC contractors, just to come see the project and give me an estimate. And, oh yeah, we can come out. And then where's your house located? And then I give them the address and they would tell me, oh, sorry, we don't go to that area. But they would
Oh,
be like 3 miles away in Livonia. So
oh,
that is a reality too, that a
wow.
lot of contractors don't want to do business in Detroit. And I think that has shifted a lot since then, but it's still very there. It's still there because I still get responses like that. Um, uh, but on top of that, finding contractors who do come out and you want to hire them, but they question why you're doing things the way you're doing. I can't tell you how much self-doubt I've had on this project. Why are you doing this? But yeah, there's definitely the contractors that I found that worked with me. We definitely developed a really good relationship, and we were we were both learning. We're both teaching each other. Um, I think that even my HVAC contractor, they were doing some mini split installations when I reached out to them, but it wasn't um, there weren't a ton of customers requesting that. Now I feel like I think that a lot of people are going to them for heat pump installations. So and my roofing contractor didn't know anything about Michigan Saves, and I said, well, can you be a part of Michigan Save so I can use the financing? So I've been encouraging contractors to sign up and learn more and become part of this ecosystem of, contractors trying to do, or people trying to do these types of projects. And so, yeah, it was a lot of learning on all of our parts.
You didn't mention anything about problems with the permitting folks, the city of Detroit inspectors and stuff. You didn't run into any issues with those folks, it sounds like, or you didn't mention any.
I did have some issues on the electrical. I did unfortunately have my first electrical contractor just couldn't pass inspection, so I had to bring in a second. Um, so unfortunately, because there's all new electrical run throughout the whole house. And there were some little things that the inspectors pointed out that needed to be addressed, but nothing major. I think the biggest headache right now is the rental code compliance in Detroit.
Oh,
So a lot of homes they the city's encouraging more rental properties to register as rental properties, but to actually gain compliance is a whole nother story. So I'm kind of going through that process right now, and it's been a little challenging. So even a home that's been beautifully renovated and brand new, I'm still coming up against a few things that are slowing that process down. But
you do need a license to rent a house or an apartment. Is that you don't
no,
you
no.
don't oh you don't need a license.
Um, I don't know if there's any way to really enforce that. So yeah, you don't need a license.
So
But
what?
they're trying to encourage more rental registration and rental code compliance.
Oh, I see. Okay, so they want
Yeah.
you to register, and there are different codes for rental properties that are different for any sort of regular house, it sounds like.
I'm
You're gonna-
learning.
You're gonna find out.
I'm learning.
Okay, yeah, it seems, okay, yeah, I guess I'm never completely surprised.
Nothing has been straightforward about
Yeah,
this
right,
project,
yes,
but
yeah. Well, it's really great that you're able to kind of share this experience, and it does. I think it's best to describe what you did as a labor of love, right?
yes. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I
I-
mean, yeah. Oh, go ahead, John.
Well, I was just wondering, what's the neighborhood like? You know, I'm kind of thinking that, and you live in the neighborhood just around the corner, right? But you put in a new home like that or renovate, I mean, it obviously enhances the neighborhood significantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the neighborhood is still, it's, I mean, it's a neighborhood that's still full of, people who were born and raised here. There's also a lot of Arab American families moving in with our proximity to Dearborn. So I have Arabic speaking neighbors on each side of me, from Yemen, and, it's still a high investment neighborhood. So you can still find some homes, although that's quickly changing. Even in the few years I've lived here, they were fairly low. So you'd have a lot of investors, foreign investors purchasing these homes. So it's still a highly investor focused community, but I think that that's changing. I think that's shifting. And in this neighborhood, there's still a lot of density. If you go north, uh, half a mile, that's where there's been a lot more vacant homes that have been torn down. But it feels very much like a suburban neighborhood. It's one of the newer neighborhoods in Detroit. The home we live in was built in the 60s, where my great grandparents lived. So, but they lived here when it was all farmland in 1925. So, yeah, but and I'm excited about some of the neighborhood development um, work that's happening.
Well, it's 8 o'clock. Thank
Yep.
you very much. I guess, does anybody have a pressing question? I'll let one more question in if somebody has one. If not, we'll call it a night, but I guess not. Nobody's raising their virtual hands. Well, Kendall, thank you. This has been a learning experience, certainly for me, but a big learning experience for you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
I'm
sharing it.
still learning.
Yeah, and you're still learning, right? You're getting a practical PhD in house
Yeah.
retrofitting. We'll have to have you come back after you put up your 10 kilowatt PV system
Yes.
and you're net zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for spending your evening with me, and thanks John for organizing.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming out to hear Kendall's story. And with that, we'll end the recording. And again,